Alright, quick little editor's note here. I'll go over my stance with gaming as a form of media itself. I believe that the accessibility at the cost of depth is always a step backwards. This only applies to games that had depth in the first place, and I believe Monster Hunter was one of these games. I commonly hear that if you make your game easier and more accessible to everyone, more people will play it, and I believe this to be true, but it usually comes at the expense of mechanical and knowledge-based intricacies of your game. The more people you get to buy your game, the more money you get. I'm aware that Capcom is a company and that making your game more accessible to raise your sales is a good business decision and will give you more money, yeah? But to me that's part of the problem. Is making your games for these type of people, the majority, and then the people that were already used to the depth and difficulty are the afterthought. That's what it feels like to me at least, and this isn't the first time I've seen it happen either. I do believe that there are ways to make your game more easy and accessible and understanding without sacrificing the depth of gameplay, but Wilds did not deliver on that. I don't like easy games, and I'm sure some of you would agree with me, and that's how I feel. And with that out of the way, please enjoy the video. Given all of the positive feedback that I got on my last video, except for this one guy, I don't really know who he is, for this video I'll make my statements clear and concise. Number 1. Monster Hunter Rise and Wilds, in my opinion, are still dog shit games, and I will die on this hill. My first video wasn't supposed to be a video essay debunking why I think the game is dog shit. I just sat at my desk and gave a completely unfiltered opinion. It wasn't a well structured critique of the game, nor was it supposed to be. Number 2. The reason I believe this game is fucking terrible has a lot to do with its core mechanics, gameplay, and cooperation, which I'll get to later in the video. And 3. I'm aware that majority of the people that play Monster Hunter nowadays enjoy it for what it is, not what it was. And now it's easy to see the new fans' true colors when faced with any opposing opinion. If you enjoy the game, that's completely fine with me. I'm aware that I have an unpopular opinion, but some of you critiqued me on my non-critiqued video with no critiques of your own, and that just goes to show how educated the current player base is. Something about new gen players and changing light bulbs. Anyways, the point I'm trying to make is that it wasn't a critique video, and this one is. And so, with that out of the way, first on the list is why I believe the game's to be fucking awful. You know, what is it with this Kid Kudu guy and hating on bullshit Game of the Year? Well, I have a couple of major points.
Before we get into those major points, I feel you should let me weigh in on your thoughts.
Wait, what the hell?
I am the light of reason, the person who will keep you in check for not considering all the angles one could take. To make you understand how someone else can see or view your point, I am your comments section.
Oh, brother, get out of my lobby.
You cannot avoid me. I suggest you try not to push away the inevitable.
Fine, yeah, whatever. Let's go. I feel a very big part of why I hate the monsters in new gen games actually has to do with the graphics and the animations. I hate to sound like an old head here, but the graphics before were very defined. The other hunters and monsters were very detailed in contrast to the background. This made it easier to see and spot each and every move that the monster was going to do. And the monster would really only move if it was 1, turning around, or 2, going to do a move. Both of these have eroded over time, as apparently being able to see what the fuck is happening is secondary to how cool the monster design probably is. The animations are very ambiguous, to say the least.
Now hold on there. Just because the animations are ambiguous doesn't mean that it's bad design. If we're thinking in the context of the game, unlike the older versions, you have more options to handle monster attacks. Part of the design of smoothing animations over like this makes it more natural and akin to real life. Old gen monsters were very robotic and moved very unnatural, at points looking like a keyframe slide straight out of a current gen Pokemon. New gen fixes this with their animations.
First of all, real life graphics doesn't equal fun. Like I said before, the stark contrast between the hunters, monsters, and backgrounds promoted a healthy balance between design and practicality for the player to quickly understand the gameplay loop. Second of all, that robotic movement you say had a purpose. Monsters in old gen tend to always take time to turn around and look at you. This innate byproduct of most monster behavior was exploitable, and with enough practice and knowledge, often rewarded the player on understanding this. You weren't always rewarded, however, given that standing right in front of the monster was a huge risk that tied into the risk assessment that the player has to make. Is it worth the extra damage or chance to stop the monster in its tracks? Well, it's really up to you to decide. Thirdly, the definition and similar color palette of the backgrounds to everything else in the game make the gameplay loop fucking awful. In my experience, there are many times when multiple moves that the monster is able to do can be done from many different ranges and look similar to each other. Now, if you're going to tell me not being able to tell a move from a different move is part of the difficulty, then you're telling me that uncertainty and outcome is difficulty. And if you think that ambiguity equals difficulty, then you're wrong. Uncertainty and outcome is just that, uncertainty. So, I want you to imagine we take this all the way to one end of the spectrum, where a monster has the same startup animation for every single move, and it's hard to tell exactly which one it's going to eventually choose. Would it be difficult? Yes. Would it be fun and or good game design? Absolutely fucking not. Now, let me get one thing straight about the weapons. I'm not an everyman. I do one thing, and I do it damn good. And that one thing is Hunting Horn. All of my opinions and critiques will be based on the fact that the lens that I view the game is through playing with Hunting Horn, the one weapon. I easily have tens of thousands of uses with this weapon throughout the entire time I've been playing any of the Monster Hunter games.
Alright, Mr. Hunting Horn expert. Care to explain how the weapon works for someone who doesn't play the weapon, such as myself? Both old gen and new gen, if you please.
Now, before I get to that, which I will, let me touch on this one topic first. If doing one thing in your game invalidates the experience, then why is that thing even there in the first place? If the developers of the game wanted you to be able to play whatever weapon you wanted to tackle the challenges that the game threw at you, what argument is saying that because you only play a couple of weapons, or you only play one, invalidates the whole experience? Sounds to me like the people that say this haven't mastered anything at all, and think I'm gatekeeping when I say that they made Hunting Horn easier to play, when in reality, it already was easy to play and understand.
My, someone sounds very hateful to people who have multiple favorite things. I wouldn't say it invalidates people's experience. I would say everyone's experience is different, and this is the experience you took from it. If I played every weapon but Hunting Horn, then what you're saying doesn't apply to me.
On the contrary there. In reality, the reason that I hate the devs doing this isn't because it makes more people play the weapon, or any weapon for that matter, but it makes the interactions that you can have with it more streamlined and redundant. The only thing this does is make your weapon feel less personal in player expression. The moves you can do with any given weapon mean a lot less when they are less committal, chained together without changing your current positioning so that you actually have to think about the next move that you do, or they're just visually flashy and nothing else. To expound on your first statement, I can give a very good example of this. The Hunting Horn was fast on purpose. That movement speed up song made you the fastest unsheathed weapon in the game, and for good reason. You want to keep the weapon out so that you can play all your notes effectively on demand. And your only defensive option was rolling. No shields, no super armor, no moves with iframes, and no guard points. So, some people might call this part clunky, but when you did sheath your Hunting Horn, if you wanted to do your draw attack, it was always the X note. And if you didn't want to do the draw attack by holding forward, you would do the slow standing, still unsheathing animation from your back. What this meant was, if you wanted to pick up a punish on a monster while your Hunting Horn was sheathed, you usually had to draw into your X for immediate damage, which, if you're trying to play a song before, it would fuck up your entire note queue. Or, you could just use it to your advantage and know that the next note you needed to play for whatever song was your X note, and sheathe at that time accordingly. With your weapon sheathed, you could do everything you needed to do, heal, sharpen, flash bomb, but if you wanted immediate damage on your draw, it was going to be X, and for the most part, that would start your song over. Of course, you didn't always have to do this, it was just a very simple optimization. It was a mechanic that you could play into that divided the good Hunting Horn players from the bad ones. Something so small and simple like this. Now obviously, that small interaction doesn't matter. You can just pull it out and do whatever note you want. And I feel as a consequence, it really doesn't need to move around as fast anymore. Thus, the gameplay loop was streamlined to stand in one place and DPS like every other weapon in the game.
Based on what you told me, it does sound clunky. You make it sound as if I wanted to turn a car left, I would need to put it in neutral first. But if I wanted to turn right, I'd need to put it in reverse. I don't play Hunting Horn, but it doesn't sound natural to me. and I'd rather have my draw attack be whatever note I want.
It's really only unnatural if you get used to the newer quality of life changes. See, it's the small things like this that make me personally feel like they don't care about the intricacies of gameplay anymore. And that's just one example. For my weapon specifically, these small changes, they're all over the place. From removing the high risk, high reward encore system, to constantly displaying the note combinations on my screen, like bitch, I know the weapon, and the backward slam not having as much value as it did before. I mean, before you would ideally want to use the backward slam to set you up facing away from the monster, since your backwards encore was your highest damaging move. That and, slamming forward usually fucked your teammates up, but you know what? Now, none of this even matters, not even a little bit.
The weapon sounds like it's different, likely changed to better help new players. It could also be changed to adapt to the different AI of the monsters in the game. Maybe you just don't see how the weapon plays because you're looking at it from how to optimally play it before and not how you can optimally play it now, with all the intricacies.
It's not just that it has new intricacies, it's that the intricacies aren't as deep. And that's the point. The intricacies now have been toned down, at least in the player expression department, and I believe it all starts with the movement speed of the weapon that's separated apart from the others. Not having that removes the core part of the weapon. Being able to gracefully move around and think about your next move was all about hunting horn, and now it feels slow, sluggish, and in the same category and playstyle as, say, the hammer. See, hammers focus more on being at the right place at the right time and being able to punish monster mistakes accordingly. Instead of being able to literally walk circles around the monster with your movement speed alone, you basically move about as fast as everything else. And I believe all of this is because you can draw into any note you want, so it's not as important to keep your weapon out as much, and as a result it becomes just like all the other weapons. The damage, the stopping power, and the cool moveset of Hunting Horn isn't what kept me playing it. It was the sheer versatility. You could do everything, be everywhere, and take risks whenever you wanted at the press of the recital and encore button, weaving in and out gracefully. I can easily say that that much is gone from the weapon now. Now, it's true that I have a strong bond and correlation to my enjoyment of the game stemming from one weapon, but that's only a small fraction of why I think these newer titles just ain't it. What means more to me is the IP itself. How does the game feel? What's the vibe that the game gives off nowadays? And the vibe is now something I can only explain as a huntathon speedrun like, more than the trials and tribulations of being a hunter from the older games. To me, a hunter that was well prepared, coordinated, and knew when to take risks was a good hunter, and that last part was the most important. Alongside being able to just punish the monster for whiffing a move that was intended to hit you or someone else, there were very many instances of assessing risk and pushing that advantage that you created for yourself, such as calling out the next move the monster was to make, positioning yourself accordingly, and taking the inherent risk of scoring more damage. In doing so, and with enough knowledge, you could reliably and repeatedly meet the damage threshold for a headlock, knowing a KO was imminent from counting stun, or just getting a little bit more mileage for a guaranteed punish, and that interaction happens all throughout the hunt.
An argument can be made for the new gen hunters in game already being experienced. They give callouts to massive attacks verbally, and I think that's good game design to ease in someone less experienced.
Something's coming!
Learning things that take a second, I feel, should be given to the player similar to how those voice callouts do, to streamline the experience.
Hey, at least that part was funny if you had the game in English. As for being prepared, it was imperative that if you don't have the right tools for the right job, your life as a hunter would become exponentially harder as a consequence. Didn't bring your flashes for a Rathalos? Well, now you're going to watch him fly. No one brought a trap for the capture quest, or it runs away from the area that you set it down in? Too bad, you should have brought more than one. Forget your cool and hot drinks? I honestly don't even have to say that one.
Look, I hate to break out of character, but you were the one who always forgot cool drinks on our hunts.
Well, yes, but look, losing all my health to the heat damage, that's fine. All I have to do is hunt the monster quicker than the heat damage kills me for, right? Hey, that's a good idea. I should write that down. Anyways, oddly specific items like the Sonic Bomb can be used in certain scenarios to make your life easier. If you have it, that is. It's a beautiful gameplay loop, really. Assessing risk in this way made the vibe of the older titles truly feel like an uphill boss battle, a legitimate threat at your appropriate rank, and being prepared to take on this uphill battle with everything you need before the hunt takes place made you feel kind of stranded in a way. It's like you were dropped off from a ship, and everyone goes, "Good luck!" and you and your team are faced with a challenge ahead. Nowadays, in these new gen games, I can just go, "What items do I need to bring with me? Actually, I don't even care. I'm just gonna go." And it really doesn't even matter. And funnily enough, in the event that I do forget,
I think this is another point of streamlining gameplay. If you forgot something, it would waste time having to go back into the hub and put up the quest again. It's nice to have a failsafe in case you did forget, so that the game doesn't waste your time.
to which I say, at what point does the quality of life or streamlining go overboard? Where do we as players draw the line? If you asked me, being ready before the hunt was kind of the whole point. You had your box at home with all your items in it, like a little storage unit. You're telling me that for each and every hunt, they bring the whole damn storage container with you? Uh, Minor point, I get it, but it was one of those small mechanics that made Monster Hunter, well, Monster Hunter to me. Removing something like that is simple, yes, but how much is too much? At what point do you streamline every system to literally hand holding the player? I think this is just a step in the wrong direction. You focus so much on making the game easier to play and not so much on making your game fun and entertaining to those that play for the experience itself.
So you think it's good to punish someone bad at the game?
Yes.
Wouldn't that make players put the game down?
Well, yes, but I believe failure is the quickest route to learning. If the game holds your hand for these kind of things, in a way, it kind of insults you for not being able to do it yourself, no?
Would it not insult you that the game is expecting something out of you that you didn't know?
You know, it's like they say, if you don't know, now you know. It's not like the game blatantly punishes you by means of instant death or sending you back to the lobby. These are just minor mistakes of forgetting an item or being in the wrong place at the wrong time. They're just that, mistakes, not catastrophic failures. You'll definitely remember it if you're paying attention to what's happening. And to continue on in this, you could also pick up on knowledge from watching other hunters either play a weapon or hunt a specific monster. It's a small but subtle form of hunter interaction, but a satisfying one to try out yourself on your next hunt. Learn from others' mistakes and their successes. And this is my last segment. I have one sentence to describe this section, and my friend Jade said it best. When it comes to the newer games and hunter interaction between each other, quote, "It's like playing a single player game with multiple people. Weapon moves and items alike don't have as much impact on how others play around you or how you play around them. In these games, it doesn't matter what anyone else is using, y'all are just DPSing the monster anyways. Doesn't matter if all four of you crowd the highest hit zone of the monster, or if a certain move you have on your weapon has flinch protection to close the distance, or if a longsword decides to get right next to you and ruin your day. It just doesn't matter anymore." I think it's important to say that these small tweaks in your gameplay, depending on not just what the monster does, but what the other hunters do around you, help express yourself as a player. The combination of you factoring in your position, the monster's position, and other players' positions meant that the moves you would choose would be different, and if you cared about other people, they would be completely different. So, in this instance, the game leaned a little bit more to cooperation. A successful hunt didn't just have you beating up on the monster as quickly as possible, but how well you could coordinate and chain attacks with your teammates to help not mess each other up. This entire layer is effectively removed in the newer titles, and it's a damn shame. I'd like there to be more of an expansion of the co-op features, like actual co-op features. Imagine if Greatsword, for instance, could plant their sword down in the ground and then put it up on their body, and another player could use it as a ramp that they could jump off of. Or imagine a shared heal system where each player only has 3 life powders for healing in the entire hunt and has to use them sparingly. Or even something as stupid and simple as making weapon attacks actually damage the other hunters that you play with. That way you would really have to coordinate your attacks, choose your moments, and be extremely cognizant of what's happening not just with the monster, but with your teammates too. these small changes alone make the game extremely more methodical, and at the end of the day, that's all I want. A methodical Monster Hunter is a good Monster Hunter, because right now, it's a single player game that you play with multiple people, and that's it.
While I agree, the game should be more multiplayer focused, wouldn't adding features like these make it so that toxic players would ruin the experience for everyone? In the example where hunters can hurt one another, someone could just target you. I feel interactions that can harm or mess with hunters can be used for bad, and it should be avoided.
To answer your last question, I'd rather the team coordination, or lack thereof, than nothing at all. The most magical part about Monster Hunter to me, or any co op game for that matter, is when two or more people collaborate together for a united effort. Something that, when you strip in fear of repercussions, can never happen. That layer is entirely removed, and for what? A sacrifice of depth? An easy one at that. Players interacting with other players. That's all it is. And not just a little bit of interaction, but a considerable portion. All in the name of adding some much needed depth. Well, Wilds is still shit. Rise has been shit, but hey, all I can hope for is that the next installment of Monster Hunter doesn't make these same mistakes. Or better yet, I'll just make the game my damn self. I mean, the latter is what I'm trying to accomplish, but in time. That's all I have for anyone that watched till the end. Make
Make
Monster
Monster
Hunter
Hunter
great
great
again,
again,
people.
people.